Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. A woman from British Columbia says her late mother's ashes were lost in the mail due to the postal strike because the funeral home chose to mail her remains one day before Canada Post went on strike. APTN's Tina House has more.
67-year-old Karen Leah Plaited Hair passed away in Vancouver on October the 20th of this year. Her daughter Chastity McCollin, who lives in Kelowna, BC, chose to have her mother cremated and had plans to take her mom home to southern Alberta to be laid to rest. Martin Brother Funeral Services in Burnaby, BC handled the arrangements. However, McCollin says she is not happy with how her and her family were treated throughout the process.
I was not given any kind of options. I was just given a tracking number and then realized that it said Canada Post on it. And from that point, basically have felt sick to my stomach every day.
McCollin is upset because one day after her mother's ashes were put in the mail, Canada Post went on strike. After calling Canada Post and inquiring about where her mother is and when she would be delivered, they could not give her any information. Previous to Chastity's mother being put in the mail, McCollin's cousin Chantel Morin spoke with Jennifer Harder, who is the senior funeral director at the funeral home. She informed them at that time that whatever the cost was above and beyond what social services would pay for the arrangements would be covered by their First Nations band.
Jennifer stated, I will give you a date of when we can do the cremation, and then we can discuss further from there how you would like her to be shipped. So that's the options that she gave us.
The family claims the funeral home did not give them an option to fly her mother's remains, but were only given the tracking number after they put her ashes in the mail. APTN News asked Canada Post about why human remains are not considered essential parcels, and they respond with this emailed statement. This is a difficult situation and we sympathize, but unfortunately, CUPW's decision to launch a national strike means that mail and parcels were trapped in the system without warning to customers. While the strike continues, we're not able to process or deliver items. Any mail and parcels in the postal network have been secured and will be delivered on a first-in, first-out basis once operations resume. However, the national strike will continue to impact service to Canadians well after the strike activity ends. McCollin says she can't properly rest knowing her mother is lost in transit and says this is inhumane treatment.
My mom is a residential school survivor, so I can only imagine that she probably still feels all the pain from that being put in a box and thrown in the mail.
Martin Brothers Funeral Services did not respond to our request for an interview. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
In the 1950s and 60s, the RCMP and Quebec Provincial Police killed around 1,000 sled dogs in Nunavik as a form of forced assimilation against the Inuit. Last Saturday, the federal government apologized for its role in the killing of the dogs. A similar apology was given by the Quebec government in 2011. Elders in the community of Kangiqsuyak accepted the apology. As APTN's Savannah Craig reports, many believe it's a step towards reconciliation.
I am sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive us.
Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Ananda-Sangari provided the historic apology for the federal government's role in the killing of Inuit sled dogs between the 1950s and the 1960s in the community of Kangiqsuyak in Nunavik in northern Quebec. The apology was well received, with Ananda-Sangari receiving a standing ovation and being embraced by elders.
You can't really move forward until the party who did you wrong admits they're wrong. And then to ask for forgiveness was quite powerful. And it was even more powerful when the elders accepted his apology.
The killing of sled dogs devastated their population, forcing Inuit into a sedentary lifestyle and taking away part of their autonomy. The massacre contributed towards mental illness, addiction, and intergenerational trauma, still felt by many in the community.
I've heard from elders of the horror of the mass killing of the dogs that occurred in this community. The Inuit were shot, burnt in a pile on the ice in front of the owners, and the remains were left there for the winter, forcing the community to be reminded daily of the violence and trauma of losing their dogs.
Many believe this is a step forward in reconciliation and are looking to revitalize Nunavik's culture and sled dog population, including dog musher TV Dupuis.
Kind of like the federal day schools and the residential schools, the dog slaughter is just another aspect of it. And this is maybe a part of it, part of reconciling with a bigger machine that was a cause to how we live today.
Dupuis says raising a dog team requires the community to come together.
I'm fairly new to this. It's been about 3 years that I even got on my cousin's team, started building my own team. So we shared the tasks where I learned from him, I learned from my neighbors, so George, Kyle, whose dogs you see here. I learned from them and eventually started my own team.
The federal government has launched $45 million to promote the revitalization of communities in Nunavik.
Gary, on behalf of Nunavik and the RCMP, we accept your apology.
Makiyavik President Peta Atami initially requested $75 million.
That 45 million sounds like a lot of money, but when you think about it, and with the cost of living up here and the hundreds of people that lost their sled dogs, it's not going to go very far in terms of compensation for the people that will receive funds. We want them to come up with the proper funds in order to have a proper healing process done. So we are still working with the Government of Canada.
Makiyavik is still deciding how it will utilize these funds to its full potential. But it will be using some of the funds to support mushers like Dupuis.
We're lucky that we're resilient people. We have resilient people that are willing to help teach the next generations on how to survive. This is a big part of survival. A lot of this too is mental health. Like, things aren't going well at home. Some people use hockey, soccer, sports, but this is like a second family, It's amazing. I have a small team. Some guys have bigger teams, so it's definitely rewarding.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Kangig-Suyuak.
One of the largest salmon restoration projects in Western Canada has just been completed, and once again, salmon are flourishing in the area. APTN's Tina House has more.
Just a 45-minute boat ride up the Pitt River is the Upper Pitt River watershed. For close to 100 years, logging development in the area cut off Pitt River to Pitt Lake, which prevented salmon from spawning in this remote area. But now, thanks to a partnership between the Katzie First Nation, the BC Parks Foundation, and numerous sponsors, water is now flowing to the Red Slough, where salmon are once again making a huge comeback.
To have been here a couple years ago and to walk around this area and to see the stagnant water and the dead salmon and just the feeling of like, see this river cut off from its natural path, and then to be here today, seeing salmon coming back, seeing the life, coming back to this area.
Rick Bailey is proud of the work that has been put in over the last 6 years, and with the population of salmon on a sharp decrease over the years, he says this restoration project is crucial.
We can see these side channels along the river, along the road. Very little salmon in there. If some of them didn't have any. But this year when we went up to open the pipe at Red Slough, we took a little tour around and checked out all the channels and streams. And each and every one of them had a lot of salmon there, and that was like, wow.
In 2021, the BC Parks Foundation purchased and protected 733 acres in the Upper Pitt River watershed. Since then, debris has been removed and water pipes have been installed, reconnecting these water channels once again. Bailey says salmon are vital to his community in so many ways, and he grew up fishing in this area.
It was being out there. I don't know, just something spiritual, something cultural that was important to us, is important to us.
Tina House, APTN National News, Pitt Meadows.
Coming up after the break, we'll hear from those ringing the alarms with the overrepresentation of Indigenous children in Alberta's child welfare system. Stick around. Welcome back. It's been 5 years since the Yukon government promised to protect the majority of the Peel watershed in northern Yukon. But now the government is suing Yukon's environmental board over its decision to recommend against a proposed mineral exploration project within the watershed. As Sarah Connors tells us, many in the Yukon and Northwest Territories feel the government has gone back on its word, and they're once again coming together to protect the Peel.
It's a court case many gathered here didn't think they'd see again. Dozens rallied outside Whitehorse's main courthouse on Wednesday in protest of a judicial review launched by the Yukon government. Protesters here feel the court case jeopardizes the integrity of the Peel Watershed Regional Land Use Plan.
Time and time again, the government has disappointed First Nation people, fallen back on broken promises.
The Peel Watershed Planning Region is a 68,000 square kilometer area located in northern Yukon. It's highly valued by nearby First Nations in the Yukon and the Northwest Territories for its clean water and untouched lands. After a 14 years long court battle to protect the Peel, First Nations and the Yukon government signed the Peel Land Use Plan in 2019. It ensures 83% of the watershed is protected from development.
A few years ago, we were happy. We were hearing some pretty good things, and coming from the government and here and there.
In 2021, Vancouver-based mining exploration company Silver 47 sought approval to do exploration work in the Peel's Michelle Creek area. The project is the first to go through the Yukon Environmental and Socioeconomic Assessment Board, or YESAB, since the plan was signed. YESAB recommended the project not go through due to significant effects it would have on wildlife and First Nations people, among other things. But the government disagrees. Its lawsuit asked for YESAB's decision to be quashed and for the project to be reassessed.
It is time for the territory to be respecting regional plans, respecting land planning. And
Jyoti Overdoon is the outreach manager for Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society Yukon chapter. She says the lawsuit is a slap in the face after years of fighting to protect the Peel.
The fact that now they're being taken to court over this really doesn't bode well for the future of that land plan and for how development or projects are going to be put through.
The hearing sparked protest in communities across the Yukon and the Northwest Territories on Wednesday.
There is not going to be a future if we don't stand up as First Nation people and the owners of the land and all of the people who are allies in that.
The 3-day hearing wraps up Friday. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Last week, APTN reported on the Alberta Child Advocate reports showing a continuation of Indigenous youth being overrepresented in the child welfare system. As APTN's Chris Stewart tells us, an associate professor says more needs to be done to lower the alarming numbers.
The numbers on last week's Alberta Child Advocates reports are not good. Despite only being under 8% of the population, 61% of youth working with the Alberta Child Advocates Office are Indigenous. These numbers have been high for decades. Audra Foggin is the Assistant Professor of Child Studies and Social Work at Mount Royal University. She is Cree and a 60s scoop survivor. She says the Alberta government needs to listen to Indigenous communities to make a change.
Taking the lead from Indigenous people, community, elders, experts, I think all of the answers that are necessary for improvement are definitely in the community, and I think we're simply not seeing that at this point.
The advocate wants the government to follow a previous recommendation of giving full supports to Indigenous communities across Alberta to have their own systems and take back their children from care. Foggin says this needs to be implemented.
Having Indigenous communities be at the helm and in the lead of their own process, of their own sovereignty, healing, reunification, family prevention is critical to reducing the numbers of Indigenous children in care.
Foggin believes the recommendations from the child advocate don't go far enough. They should be binding, not just recommendations.
We know that the Canadian government and that child welfare has never been a good parent. We have to seek other solutions, and I think having more teeth or more legalities implemented rather than just recommendations is a really important step.
The Alberta Children and Family Services Department sent a statement to APTN on their reaction to the Child Advocate's report. It reads in part, "These findings continue to inform changes that are helping stabilize the child intervention system. This includes focusing on prevention and early intervention initiatives, including ensuring Indigenous children and youth benefit from culturally appropriate services." It goes on to say, all recommendations made by the OCYA are actioned in a way that will make a positive difference for children, youth, and families. Prior to this report, Children and Family Services has implemented 105 of the 111 recommendations from the OCYA, and 5 remain in progress. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Acclaimed artist Casey Adams has a new exhibition. We'll show you that and much more after the break. Welcome back. A new exhibition by artist Casey Adams is creating a dialogue between past, present, and future generations. Reporter Sierra Bettens brings you to Adams's 7 Generations Gallery, opening in Winnipeg.
In her latest exhibition, Cree, Anishinaabe, and English artist Casey Adams connects generations. Portraits of youth from Adams' community, the Fisher River Cree Nation, bring the walls to life.
She created the photos in 7 layers. So those 7 layers represent 7 generations, the concept of 7 generations.
The 7 Generations exhibition opened Thursday at the University of Winnipeg's Gallery 1C03. Adams created the portrait series titled We Are Still Here after the unmarked graves of 215 children were discovered at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. It features ancestor regalia loaned from the Manitoba Museum to connect past and present generations.
They're surrounded by regalia, actually, ancestor regalia, to really solidify that idea of looking to the ancestors. The ancestors, have been dreaming of us, thinking about us in the present.
Nicole Patterson and her son Gibson Travers were featured in Adams' documentary, Relational Making. In the film, Adams interviews mothers of powwow dancers from the Fisher River Cree Nation about making regalia for their children.
I did make his outfit with a lot of help from community members, elders. His colors are incorporated into his outfit. I just finished this last night, so I was beating like a mad woman trying to finish his headpiece.
My colors are blue, yellow, red.
What's your spirit name?
Hunting bear.
While Adams could not attend the opening due to illness, her son Mac shared her words.
She is so grateful for this opportunity to showcase this beautiful work of the ancestors. This exhibition is a love letter to her community.
7 Generations is on display at the University of Winnipeg's Gallery 1C03 from now until February 14th. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Women make up only 7.4% of trades workers in Canada, and even fewer are Indigenous. Desiree Charlton, who recently graduated with her aircraft maintenance engineer diploma, wants more Indigenous women to join her. She shared her journey and vision with Sierra Bettens.
My name is Desiree Charlton. I'm a proud Indigenous woman from War Lake First Nation. I'm a level 2 aircraft maintenance engineer, and I just recently graduated the aircraft maintenance engineer diploma program at Red River Polytechnic.
Desiree Charlton remembers the first time she sat in the co-pilot seat of a plane. She was just 7 years old.
During the flight, the pilot let me kind of take control of the aircraft, and I was able to, pull the nose up and do a little dive, and I still remember that feeling to this day. The feeling I got in my heart, and I loved it. I loved aviation.
2 decades later, the 27-year-old's dreams have taken flight as an aircraft maintenance engineer. But the path there was turbulent. Charlton grew up between Winnipeg and the War Lake First Nation, over 11 hours away from the city.
I had to move alone to the city without my mom and my sister to finish high school. And that was really challenging for me. I felt very alone. And it was hard on me. And that led me to eventually drop out.
In 2021, Charlton earned her GED, followed by an introduction to trades course.
I was taking a 2-hour bus ride to school and home every day when I was 5-6 months pregnant. I remember taking my last exam for Introduction to Trades, and it was my due date. And I remember I had my laptop set up on the kitchen table, and I was doing my last exam on an exercise ball, trying to induce labor.
After graduating from the trades program, she took a year off to raise her child. When she was ready to land back in school, she sought the advice of a career counselor.
They kind of said, aircraft maintenance engineering sounds like you would enjoy it, but I don't feel like you'd fit in.
Determined to prove the counselor wrong, she enrolled in Red River College Polytechnic's Aircraft Maintenance Engineer diploma program. During the 2-year program, she won several awards and scholarships for her hard work.
I competed in Skills Canada. I was in the provincials. I placed 3rd out of Manitoba, so I'm proud of myself for that.
She credits her family and community for inspiring her to keep going.
I felt like everyone back home was cheering me on, and whenever anything happened, they reached out to me and they let me know they were proud of me and they were excited for me.
Now, as a level 2 aircraft maintenance engineer working for Perimeter Aviation, she shares what she told the counselor who doubted her.
She said I couldn't do it. I did it, and I'm still going. There's still a lot for me out there. I'm still learning every day. I'm here, and I'm taking up space.
While she's currently the only Indigenous woman in her male-dominated workplace, she hopes others will join her.
We need more Indigenous people in aviation, Indigenous women in aviation. Like we deserve to take up that space.
Sierra Buttons, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Great story there. Well, that's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this weekend. For news anytime, though, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and be sure to tune in on Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for your first look at the week's news with Creason. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy McGuich. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.